Kristi Chun, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate you spreading the word about this.
Anything I can do at all. I don't expect to change the world on this, but if I can make a small percentage of change, then it's worth it. I saw you, we were just talking before, I just saw you on Brianna Banos's documentary, and it broke my heart, and so I want to amplify your story as much as possible. I just want to clarify for the audience that you're the mother of Colby Chun, who had topical steroid withdrawal. And I was wondering if you could just start from the beginning of when this skin condition or any sort of skin thing happened with your son and where it went from there.
Um, yeah, so this happened many years ago in 2017, and like a lot of parents and newborn babies, it started off with just a really small rash on his ear, and then it's progressed to his mouth. And we went to the doctor to ask about it. Being a new mom, I really wasn't sure what's normal, what we should be concerned about. So we just kind of brought it up casually, and they prescribed us a low dose steroid. And we used it, and we're told to kind of, use it as a thin layer and monitor it. And it slowly started to spread from there. Um, and we were in constant communication with our doctors. We saw them regularly. They were accessible by text message, and I would text her photos and updates on what's going on. And it would initially, when we first used it, it would work like magic. It really just resolved overnight. It was like a miracle. One day he'd have, a little rash, and then the next day, like perfect skin. And it was this constant back and forth where it would look better. We would let her know. She would say, okay, you can kind of start to wean off of it. And we would, and then it would come back. And it was just an increasing progressive, cycle where now the rash was starting to spread and becoming more pronounced. And, we started to use more and more of this cream, to a point where over 2 months, it was so severe that it covered him completely head to toe. I mean, there wasn't an inch of good skin on his body.
Yeah, and what's going through your head at this point? You said you're a new mom, right? And I can totally understand that. But one of the things that I'm trying to crack in my head is we put the cream on and we put it on the underlying condition, and then it goes away. Like you said, it's magic, and then it comes back. What was going through your head? Are you like, is it just not more like powerful enough, or what's...
Um, you know, it was so new, and I I don't know. One part of me thought, is this like something that's wrong with him? Maybe we're just like that one anomaly where we just really unlucky. And he's just got this really severe eczema that we have to deal with. So I'm gonna, follow the doctor's protocol and trust them that they've, know what they're doing. But there was another side of me just kind of in the back of my head, that voice that says, this is just doesn't sit right, doesn't feel correct. My in my family, myself, I've never had severe eczema. My husband doesn't, we don't have any history of this in our family. It just felt like something's just not right. And so that's when I really started to not only question the doctors, but also started to keep a log of, you know, I started to kind of go back through our medical records and see when was this first prescribed, and kind of correlate it with photos and things that I've had, and start to document, okay, um, this kind of pattern. And after 2 months is where, it was enough time where I could see, every time that we stopped, it would come back with a vengeance. And so we would try to put an even stronger drug on it, and it would come back even worse. Every single time it was this yo-yo effect. Um, and so it got to the point where after 2 months, I could actually almost time when the reaction would be. I could time it that, okay, if I put it on at this time, within 36 hours, it will come back. And that was a clear indicator to me that it really was the drug that was making him sick.
Wow. And okay, so just for clarification, so I can map this in my head, the whole use of topical steroids on Colby, that only extended to 2 months, or did you go any further than that?
It was maybe 2.5 months max.
The JP Touchette podcast is brought to you by Compadre. Love every walk. Do you have a strong and willful pulling dog? Well, not anymore. Compadre, the makers of the patented no-pull solution, have created a humane harness and leash system to help train against pulling and lunging behaviors. Compadre believes that you don't have to hurt a dog or break their beautiful spirit in order to get them to be good citizens on a leash. Gentle corrections around the strongest part of a dog's anatomy, the chest, means that you can guide and train your dog without painful pinch collars, e-collars, or choke chains. This system helps you to gain your dog's attention and lead them to walk calmly beside you. And if you use promo code JPT2025, you can get 10% off your order. And I can tell you from experience, you'll be glad you did. Seriously, guys, I have actually had a chance to try this myself, not on me, but on a big dog with a huge personality and a lot of energy. And this is a legit product that I actually believe in, and I believe in the owner's mission as well. This is an excellent company, and if you want to change the way that you are walking with your dog, this is the way to go. So if you want to see why dog trainers, pet owners, and vets love Compadre, then visit compadre.com. That's COMPAWDRE.com. Thanks, y'all. Peace. Wow. And if you're comfortable with answering, could I ask you which specific drugs and how much and where?
It was triamcinolone was the first, and I think it was 0.025 or something very minimal. And then after that, it progressed to other drugs. I think there was one oil that they had us. It's all documented in our Instagram page, but I've tried to be very meticulous about what we were prescribed and when. He also was given, I think, 1 round of oral prednisone because it about halfway through, maybe about 1 month in, we were getting to a point where we would have to. The rash was so severe that we would have to cover his whole body in topicals. So our doctor said, that's pretty much equivalent to giving him like an oral steroid. So let's just switch to this oral steroid. And so he had some of that. And about midway through is when we were referred to a dermatologist. And at that point, we thought, oh, okay, good. Now we're in the hands of a specialist. But actually, that really was not, it was just more steroids. Yeah.
And what was the reasoning behind it? I'm curious because a lot of people, including myself, they have this moment where they're like, okay, the first moment is, wow, this is like magic, like you said. Then it comes back. Then they're like, okay, maybe I need to put more, maybe I need to put stronger. And then there comes a point where you're like, this is not working. Like something is wrong, exactly as you said. What were the reasonings behind what the dermatologist was saying when he gave you stronger ones?
Just that he had severe eczema. We were at a point where we were seeing our pediatrician once a week. We were seeing the dermatologist once a week. We were referred to an allergist. We were referred to a second dermatologist for a second opinion. And they all agree that he would have this for, some form of it for the rest of his life. Like it was just going to be something that we were going to have to deal with forever.
Yeah. So all the king's horses and all the king's men all together on Colby, and that's the answer that we have. Yeah, that really, I'm sure, bothers you too. And could you go into more the specific symptoms once you really noticed that this was the medication causing this? What was the full length of what was going on with him?
I mean, it was bad. I mean, he was really, really suffering. Even when his skin was good, it like physically looked clear. He was just never settled. He would not sleep well. He just was extremely fussy. And then, you know, towards the end, the steroids really weren't working at all. And he got to a point where it was, when towards the end when we finally decided we would stop, he was full body, like head to toe in, lobster red burning skin. And we would have strangers on the street come up to us and say like, is your baby okay? And like literally have people come and like pray for us, strangers. It was so obvious that something was wrong with him. He was not sleeping for more than a couple hours or an hour at a time. And towards the end he started to severely, he failed to thrive. So he stopped gaining weight. And that's where it became kind of very critical and scary to me. And I could see where the path was leading. If we kept on this path and he stopped gaining weight or worse, started to lose weight, I knew that we were going to end up in the hospital where I felt like the pressure would be even more on me to use steroids. And so I kind of just made the call to, we tried that route long as as much as we could, and it just wasn't working. So I decided to write it then and there, stop it.
And at this time when this was happening, how old was Colby?
3.5 months. So his first prescription was at 1 month old.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. So he couldn't talk. He couldn't
No.
speak for himself.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's in this situation where he's in excruciating pain. He can't sleep. He's covered head to toe in molten lava, and he can't say, stop this cream. He can't say, I don't want to do that. He can't, right? All he can do is cry.
Right. Yeah.
Whew. Yeah, that really hits me hard. And what were the steps you started to take once this was apparent to you that this was something different?
Well, we had been trying to taper. I think that's a popular misconception. A lot of people I've seen on other posts like, well, you just didn't use it properly, or you didn't, taper off, or, but I think if any of us could just use a cream like a lotion for the rest of our life, I mean, we would do that if it actually worked. But we were forced just to stop. We tried to taper off of it, and it just would not work. And he's getting sicker and sicker. So I just decided this is the day. I'm not going to do this anymore. And I just cold turkey. We just stopped using any and all steroid creams. We started to use aloe vera and like the fresh version. And it seemed to work almost like a bridge to where we didn't need to use the cream anymore. And it just so happened to coincide with the doctor's appointment. So she could see that, his skin was improving without the steroids. And I told her, this seems to be working fine. We're going to switch to this. She felt that it was okay. And so that gave me kind of the relief and the permission to stop. And then I really avoided the derms and doctors for a while because it was really just a pressure cooker. Every time you're in there, like, well, we just have this other drug and this other drug. So yeah, just taking that pressure off, and navigating it on our own, and having the conviction to do that because we had tracked it for so long and I had the documentation that gave me the confidence to, take this natural path. Um, the alloy uh, eventually stopped working, and then we went into just full blown TSW, and it was really, it exploded like a volcano. It was so much worse without the steroids, but we just fought through it.
Yeah, I've heard from the people at the CAP clinic who gave me some advice during my worst hour, if you will, that you just have to suffer through it. Is that all that you found that you could do, was just give him emotional support and comfort, or was there anything in those, in that fresh time after stopping the topical glucocorticoids that you found helped him?
Um, we swaddled him a lot. We swallowed him like he was in a swaddle, almost like a baby straitjacket for, I don't know, the majority of his first year of life. And a lot of, um, you know, putting on a happy face and just distraction, you know. Um, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
It was a really hard time, you know. We knew that he was suffering and you have to put on this happy face, that everything's okay, you know. Played with him a lot, gave him, anything to distract from the itch. Um,
I, I
and yeah,
I
sleep,
can't even
yeah.
imagine what you were going through at the time. Sorry to interrupt you. I mean, as an adult going through that is horrifying beyond all measure. But just tapping into what makes into the core of what makes you a human is like caring for your child, and then not being able to do anything about that. I can't I can't cope with it. And that's why it's so important, and I'm so thankful that you came on the show, because I just, for the parents listening to this, I really hope it's as valuable as I find it right now. So thank you for telling your story.
Yeah, excuse me. I'm sorry. I didn't know that's all still in there, but I think that was really, really hard.
Yeah.
To put on a happy face when you know it's so critical. To be in charge of another human being, and it really felt like a life or death decision. Like, okay, I could continue and believe what the doctors are telling me, but in my gut, I felt like I'm killing him. What we're doing was literally killing him. And it was a really tough call to go against what conventional medicine and what all of these experts are telling you. But just something as a mom told me that it wasn't working, and we had to. And the alternative is terrible, right? The alternative is TSW, and that how painful that's going to be too. So, but yeah, putting on a happy face and yeah, emotional support. I mean, that's all we could do is give him healthy foods that we thought would support his body in healing naturally. I would take him outside and we would go on daily walks for sunshine and just anything for him to, uh, calm him. The baby straight jackets, and I think I think of course it's itchy, but he was so little he couldn't even scratch. So I think just holding him tight and just psychologically, like, there's nothing that he could do. I think his body would eventually almost like give up.
Did it ever? Did you notice that there was a point where it started to relent? I mean, I've heard that the first, couple of months, depending on the case, are the worst, and then afterwards it sort of plateaus. Did you notice that, or?
Um, I looking back at the photos, I can definitely see where, yeah, we went from full body lobster reds, head to toe, swelling, edema, like no hair. It, he was very, very ill. And in the first few months, you could actually start to see where that redness subsided. You could see where it's almost started to concentrate into certain areas of his body, and there was smaller patches of clear skin. But this is almost a decade ago, so there wasn't as
Mm,
much, I think, other cases to follow. So, and I didn't even know. I was really going through this blind. And when you're in it, it is so severe. I'm sleep deprived. I was getting maybe 3 hours of sleep a day. Um, I would stay up with him all night, and then our sitters would come over during the day, and I would, leave that him with them like from 9 a.m. and I would get in like maybe 3 hours during the day, and then get up and do it all over again. So, uh, and you're constantly questioning yourself, of course, now that I can look back on it and see that there's a clear pattern, not just with us, but with almost every other TSW baby, they heal in a year or 2 years, and it's almost the identical, pathology. Um, but at the time, I didn't know that. So it really feels like you don't know if it's getting better. And it also cycles, right? I mean, there's times where you kind of feel like, oh my God, I'm going to turn the corner. This could almost be over. And then it blows up again. So it's constantly playing with your emotions. Um, so um, I didn't see it initially, but I think if you document it well, there is clear signs of progress.
yeah, and I totally understand what you were saying, because, and I can only really speak for myself, is that I did have a moment where it started to get better, but because the condition is so awful, you're still in hell the whole time. It's still
Yeah.
not optimal until it's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness. Um, what were some things that kept you going? Because you had to make this monumental decision. I mean, you felt like you were killing your son, but also he's suffering more in order for this greater good in the end. How do you keep going during that?
Um, I tell everyone to keep to keep a log, So I did that throughout. I took pictures every single day. Close up of his full body, so that when I questioned myself, I could look back and say, "Hey, look, this little spot here, it's gone. It's actually better, right?" And also tracking what his systemic symptoms were. Like, the skin, it cycles through these phases. It's so up and down and unpredictable. But there were other things that were signs of healing that um, were sustained and never backtracked. For example, his weight. He started to pick up weight. And it was a clear, increase once we stopped using steroids. He started to get some color back in his skin. He got hair regrowth, all of those things improved, and they never, it wasn't one of those two steps forward, one step back. Social media, I tried to find somebody else that I could follow. And there was another mom, she's actually on our page, and her son's skin looked exactly like Colby, exactly. And it turned out that he was given the same exact medications. They were just around the same age, and he was maybe 6 months ahead of us. And so I kind of use that as my own roadmap, like we're tracking how they're progressing. And so social media was a huge boon for me to be able to see that there are other people that actually came before us and healed.
Yes, that's one of the true blessings of this, is that there is a community, and they're the nicest people I could ever imagine. It's just, oh man. Were there any victory moments along the way, other than the small victories of like, oh, this tiny spot is gone and that's how I keep my sanity in this moment? Were there moments where Colby got to do things he couldn't before and he noticed it?
Um, yeah. Sorry. Um, yeah, there were a lot of those, like he was delayed in crawling, delayed in walking, but when he finally did, it was you know, it felt like we were on the right track. I remember walking with him outside, and that moment that he lets go of your hand and just is actually walking on his own, or just smiling, just smiling, like
Yeah.
playing with other kids, and just his skin looks so terrible compared to other kids his age. But I mean, I remember he was just covered in patches of red. Uh, but I remember just that smile on his face, just so nice to see. You can see that he was getting better. And I remember the first day that he finally wore um, a regular t-shirt, not like a full body pajama, just it was so nice to see him free and carefree, like especially children, children shouldn't be uh, in a straitjacket.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an incredible animated movie. I think it's Rescuers Down Under or something. There's a big albatross played by oh man, I'm on the spot. I can't remember the actor's name, but he's like, kids shouldn't be missing. Kids should be having cookies and milk and running around the house like, and I'm like, that's exactly it. It just, we no child should have to go through that. And oh my gosh. But I'm so glad to hear that even though he was in so much pain, he was able to have those moments. Like I say this almost every single TSW episode that I do, but I got to a point where I could wear both underwear and pants at the same time. And I was just overjoyed. I'm like, underwear and pants are so underrated. Like just sitting down with clothing on. Oh man. Well, that's good. That's good good for food for my soul to hear that he had those moments. If I may, I would like to delve into a little bit of some of the actions you tried to take, both medically and legally with the doctors and stuff like that, and how that went, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's so frustrating, and I think so many people have these stories where you really give them the benefit of the doubt that, if they only could see, that like that there's a pattern. They just don't know any better. But I really tried my hardest, to ask the right questions and to give them documentation. I wrote an entire letter to our doctors along with photos and all of the white papers and resources and reports, and mailed it to them. And at our next doctor visit, hey, did you get that thing that I mailed you guys? And, she looked at it and said, oh yeah, and just, casually handed it back to me and completely just dismissed it, that, if there's not enough evidence, and it's, just severe eczema. And if it really was the steroids, then, you would have seen X, Y, and Z. I mean, they just explain it away. It doesn't matter how much you can correlate it and show how many pictures, um, and so I really think that is fully preventable. I mean, there's so many moms that reach out to me on our page, and their story starts out exactly the same. A very minor superficial rash. And I think we're so trained to see perfect images of babies with perfect skin, that when we see something wrong, we jump on it and say, oh, what's wrong, and we take them to the doctor, and they're given a cream, a harmless cream, and it's prescribed so casually, with no real instructions or warning of side effects, that we use it, and then before you know it, you're in TSW. And so, all I want is for them to acknowledge that there is this possibility, and to, change the prescribing practice. If you know that your option is to deal with a little ugly rash or potentially go through TSW, I think most people would deal with that little ugly rash. Um, and so they really did refuse. And so we went through another process it's called a MICP review. It's a informal mediation process that you have to go through before a formal malpractice lawsuit is filed. That wasn't my goal. I'm not trying to take anybody's career or, ruin their livelihoods, but it really was just more of me trying to give them a wake up call, because the normal route of trying to just have a normal conversation was just a wall. And so, in the state of Hawaii, there's a 2-year statutes of limitations, and we were coming up against that. So either we had to file something or lose our chance forever. So we did file with the MICP. It was a very cumbersome process with fees, and it's, for a normal layperson, it's really difficult to figure out what you're supposed to do. So I represented myself. I had some guidance with another attorney who was so gracious in trying to help us. And we went to a meeting with an independent third-party board of an attorney and a doctor, along with our dermatologist and pediatrician and their insurance legal representatives. And it really felt like David and Goliath, like you have this whole like panel of experts and legal team, and me and my husband, and my notes. And yeah, it didn't turn out well. They didn't want to hear anything that we had to say. Really, it was just kind of a speed bump in them trying to discourage us from filing a formal lawsuit. And my asks were really, really simple. I asked that I read a statement. I asked that they file an adverse reaction report with the FDA. I asked that they put steroids as a allergy in his chart, and to sit with ITSAN to learn more about TSW. And they disappeared into another room. They said, okay, we're going to discuss it amongst ourselves, and we'll come up with a decision. And then they just never came back. The third party board came back, the doctors and their attorneys left, and they said they're not going to do any of that. And if you want to mail them your statement, you can mail them your statement, and maybe they'll read it.
Yeah, so they're out there like, when's lunch?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, this whole self-fulfilling prophecy when it comes to the treatment of skin conditions with topical steroids. Oh, okay, you have a little rash. Well, you're going to have that for the rest of your life, so therefore you're going to need these creams for the rest of your life. So in their line of thinking, there is no other option than that, because they've already covered all of the bases. They already have closed off all other possibilities. And I can't stand it. And that's why we need people like yourself to come forward and share your story, because if if people with the credentials aren't going to do it, then we, the people, are going to have to do it, and just say no. Yeah, sure. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but extraordinary evidence and claims require extraordinary eyeballs. And I don't see the eyeballs, except for perhaps Dr. Ian Miles and Dr. Peter Leo and a handful of other courageous people. Have you had, Kristi, have you had any vindication of late? Has there been anything like that for you?
You know, I think one day I'll get the courage to maybe try and approach those same doctors again, you know, with given that there are people like Dr. Ian Miles and there are people like Dr. Leo now, you know, and that wasn't the case before. And, you know, our page itself with all of those other stories that follow the exact same pattern. But it's a very, very slow road. And yeah, thank goodness that we have a growing, strong community of people who just don't want to sweep this under the rug. You know, I know when we joined the Facebook page, I think there were maybe, I don't know, under 10,000. I think now there's just, it's just exploding, you know, and I mean, just so much more awareness for it. And we were part of that, you know, other meeting about, you know, getting, you know, our state legislature involved and things like that and getting a TSW resolution. So I think it's just all these tiny drops in the bucket have to overflow at some point.
Yep. We've got a lot of work to do, and I know this. I mean, we can all see that this is incredibly traumatic to have to retell and rehash and go through it again. I know what that's like, but thank goodness that you made that decision, because I can't help but think about all the other kids whose parents just didn't get it. And where are they now? I mean, I think a lot of them I've been able to talk to who are in their 20s and they're screwed for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Because there was no one like you in their life to say, no, this ain't it, Chief. Like, oh gosh.
Yeah, on that note, it's really scary to think about now that there is this eyeball on steroids, that they're really just moving on to the next non-steroidal intervention, which is kind of sickening, you know, with worse side effects. And even when we were going through it, I texted our dermatologist and she said, you know, well, the good news is that there's a lot of non-steroidal drugs that are on the horizon that are going to get approved, you know, and it's like they still don't see that's not the answer, right? Instead of going backwards, they're just doubling down and putting kids on even, you know, worse medications, if there could be a thing.
I hate to. I mean, like you, I really want to give people the benefit of the doubt as much as possible because we're all humans here. But I think with the current system we're in, unless there's a system in which you pay the doctor to not use any medication, then there's always going to be another medication because people got to they got to bring home the bacon. And it's just, I mean, and you hear that, like in my situation, it was either you take this tub of steroids or you can take this injection where we don't have any long-term studies on, but I promise you it's going to work. Whereas this thing almost destroyed your life. Promise you this one's going to work. And for some people, maybe it does, but how can you expect the public to trust you after that? And we're going to have, like, I don't see a future where, you know, we upend doctors out of their offices, but we at least get a new insight or put it in a textbook or get a label warning on the box, like you were saying. Like if you had seen, okay, I'm going to give this to Colby. Oh, here's a picture of 10 kids who look like they've been through a meat grinder. Maybe I'm not going to give this to my son, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The incentives are not set up for them, you know. I mean, it's medicine, I think there's no incentive to tailor it. It's just very transactional. You know, you sit in your waiting room, you see them for 15 minutes, and then you're in and out, and you know, you just want what drug fits what condition. And then I think also because steroids are supposedly the standard of care, there's, you know, a disincentive to go against it, right? To say like, oh, don't do the steroids and go through TSW. They don't want to be responsible for that. So yeah, but what I just don't understand is that they are not even open-minded to just even explore the possibility that, you know, that there could be a correlation there. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. At least look at it. And yeah, I understand. I understand from the point of view of like, it's either my job if I'm a doctor, my job is to make sure that this patient has symptom relief. And 2 + 2 = 4, right? Like if I don't give him the steroids, he's going to have a worse time because that's what he's saying. So I got to give him the steroids so he has less symptoms. And if I don't give it to him, then I'm harming the patient. And I can understand from that point of view. But if they come to you with evidence, like if a doctor is listening to this, if I come to you with, my TSW resolution from the Senate and Ian Miles' paper, please just look at it, or at least
Right.
Google TSW. And I think for a lot of people that they're not even willing to, and I don't understand why.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, going back to the, you know, alternative drugs, I remember there was a second dermatologist for that second opinion, and he actually ended up putting in our records. I didn't know this, that there was signs of steroid rebound, and so that's what they kind of call it, is, you know, steroid rebound, which is TSW. But then he wanted to give us Protopic, right? And he, at the time, I don't think, or Eladel, one of the two, and at the time it wasn't approved for children under 2 years old. But he said, you know, we could give it to your husband if he's got any kind of, you know, eczema or anything, you know, and then if you want to give it to your son, you can, you know. And I said, well, isn't there like a he said, oh, there's like a black box warning, but you know, it's been debunked, you know. And now that's just how casually it's prescribed, and it's so easy to want to take that drug, especially when you're suffering, right? It's just unethical. And
Yeah.
I looked at it later, and you know, the black box warning was for lymphoma, which is, you know, cancer of your lymph nodes, and which makes a lot of sense. You know, Colby had these lymph nodes that were like the size of a pea, like hard as a rock, you know, under behind his ears. And, you know, I can only imagine if we had moved on to something stronger like Protopic, what that could have done to his immune system.
Yeah, about the lymph nodes, how long did that take to go away? Because me personally, I'm 18 months TSW and I still have extremely swollen lymph nodes. And I'm terrified for the exact reason that you just said. Cancer. Like, did that go away?
It did go away. Yeah. So I would
Okay.
say about 90% he was healed in 2 years. But yeah, the lymph nodes are one of the last things to go. You know, his skin looked pretty good, but I could still feel them under the surface. But they did eventually resolve.
Okay. And so it took. like in total around 2 years for him to get back to normal, or is he still like, how is he doing as of today?
Today he's great. I mean, he has some food allergies, but he's living life. I mean, we there's always, I think, a little bit of residual TSW. Like for example, he has some trouble focusing because I think we kind of built in distractions from when he was really little. So, um, but compared to TSW, he's a normal, healthy kid on no medications. I mean, I think, yeah, and he's thriving. So, yeah.
That's the ultimate victory, I think. I mean, to me, if I were a father or a mother and I had that at the end of the road, is that I had a child that is on no drugs and is thriving, you're winning. That's so awesome. Is he able to reflect on that time, or do you think it was too young for him to really
I think
recollect? Like,
it
is he able
was
to voice?
that was too young. I think he kind of knows that he went through this, but he doesn't really remember it, thank goodness. And I
Yeah.
think that was maybe somewhat of a blessing that he was so young that he didn't know any different, I versus adults, right? You know that something's very wrong. But yeah, I remember telling him when he was, an infant, like, life is not like this, I promise. Like, life is not meant, like, it's not just endless suffering, it's going to get better, and it's worth living.
Yeah. Dang straight. Dang straight. Yeah. I wish I went through it when I was that young. If I had to choose, it would be a time where I couldn't really remember it. Yeah. That's so awesome. I'm so glad. And I mean, he's out, like, he can play with other kids. He can participate in whatever he wants, basically. He's good.
Yeah, yeah, for the most part. I mean, there are some days where we have to wrap his arms for school, but it comes and goes, but it doesn't stop him from living like a normal childhood.
Excellent. Excellent. That's what I needed, because before we started this podcast, I watched Still Preventable and I saw the story and I'm like, I need to know that this kid is okay. And that's how I feel with the other pair of parents on the documentary. Is like, just tell me that they're okay, that they're smiling somewhere, having a good time. Let me see if I can conjure up another question or two before we close. Is there any advice, or if you could, like, let's just say a parent is watching this and they're about to think about giving their kids this medication, or maybe someone who already did. Is there anything you would say to them?
Well, if you haven't, I would say absolutely not. It
Yeah.
is poison. It's poison, I mean, it's an extremely slippery slope, right? I mean, if you think about any other medication that we give, especially children, right, the dosage is down to the milligram, right? I mean, it's measured out based on their height and their weight and their age, but not topical steroids, right? I mean, there's all different kinds of drugs, all different potencies and, area of application compared to their body surface. It's so not scientific. And the difference between, toxicity and it being okay is a very, very thin, slippery slope. And if you do not need it, if it's not absolutely critical, like, I don't know, like an organ transplant where you need steroids, right? I wouldn't do it. It's not, if you don't need it, you should, less is more. Um,
Got it.
and
Yeah.
if you are in a situation where you think that, this could be TSW that you're dealing with, I think you really got to research it and start to document it yourself, because you're not going to get the diagnosis that you want from a professional. I mean, the majority of us have all self-diagnosed, and I don't know about you, but I never got a diagnosis from a doctor. And
Yep.
you really have to have conviction because TSW is a really tough road and tough journey. But it's not forever. It isn't forever. And at the end of the tunnel is a drug-free life for your kids. Um, so yeah, it's possible, and you're not crazy. I think that's how we all feel is like, oh, I'm the anomaly. I'm just gonna have this severe eczema for the rest of their life, and I just got unlucky. But follow your gut. I think everybody knows in their gut that this something is just not right, and you're not the unlucky one. TSW is so much more prevalent than the numbers show, and that people say it is. I mean, just look at the grassroots movement. I mean, if that doesn't tell you how prevalent it is, the fact that we're doing this podcast, we're not doing this because we have all the time in the world, or we're doing it because it's real. Um,
Yeah.
and you're not crazy, and follow your gut. I think moms know their kids best.
Yep. Yep. I think they do. And thank goodness you made that decision. And it's, yeah, I hope down the line he knows that. I mean, I know you do, and I know I do. This was awesome. This was such an awesome conversation. I really, really appreciate you coming on and telling your story. I know it was hard. It's hard for me to listen to as well because it's so painful, but I hope that this has the impact that we all need it to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
All
I just
right.
want to say that I'm so grateful for this community. In the beginning, I was like, why aren't more people speaking out? But now, there's so many people that are just raising the alarm bells and the red flags like you. And, you're healed. You could go on with your day and go back to normal life. But, we're like, coming back for the people that need it and speaking out for the people that are still going through it and all the people that could, it could potentially save. So I'm so glad that I'm not in it alone, and that there are other people like you guys, because it's a group effort for sure.
Yeah. 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 Well, it's a pleasure to do so. I hate to correct, but I'm certainly not 100% healed. I may look like it, but I think that's part of why I have to do this is because it is eczema is a cakewalk compared to I'm literally quoting a mother in that documentary is that eczema is a cakewalk in comparison to TSW, and she was so freaking right, because if it was just severe eczema, then it would not be like this.
Right.
But anyways, thank you for contributing to the community. And I loved this conversation, and I can't wait to get it out there for people to listen to. So I'll hang up the episode, but it will just stop recording, and then we
Okay.
can hang up after that.
Okay.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Kristi.
Yeah. Thank you.